I stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of my office, the late morning sun casting long shadows over the endless rows of green outside. From here, the farm didn't look like soil and crops. It looked like power. The silk of my cream blouse clung lightly to my skin, a reminder that I'd been rushing since sunrise. Somewhere behind me, the soft hum of the industrial refrigerator and the faint earthy scent of freshly picked strawberries filled the air. My phone buzzed against the polished oak desk. I reached for it without looking, still watching the delivery trucks roll down the dirt path like clockwork soldiers. Unknown number. I hesitated, thumb hovering. Then I answered. Addison? It's Claire. My cousin. The same cousin who, years ago, laughed so hard at my dream that she nearly spit out her iced coffee. Her voice was sugary, but I heard the strain. I'm in town. Thought I'd stop by. Maybe see how you're doing out here. A flicker of amusement tugged at my lips. She had no idea. No idea that the girl she mocked in her parents' kitchen now supplied produce to more than half the country. I glanced at the framed photo of my grandmother on the shelf, her weathered hands holding a basket of tomatoes. Sure, Claire, I said softly, my voice smooth as honey. Come by. I'll be here. I hung up, feeling the weight of the past press at the edges of the present. She was walking straight into the truth. I was 21 the night Claire's words cut deeper than she ever knew. It was late summer and my aunt's kitchen smelled of cinnamon rolls and fresh coffee. The whole family had gathered for a Sunday dinner, one of those noisy evenings where conversations overlapped and laughter bounced off the walls. I was sitting at the counter, flipping through seed catalogs I'd brought with me, my heart pounding with excitement over the land I'd just inherited from Grandma June. Claire leaned over my shoulder, peering at the glossy pictures of heirloom tomatoes and sweet corn. Addison, she said with a smirk, you're really gonna waste your life digging in the dirt? I looked up, surprised. It's not wasting. I want to build something. A real farm. Organic, sustainable. She laughed, that loud, sharp kind of laugh people use when they want others to join in. And they did. My uncle shook his head. My mother's lips pressed into a thin line, like she was embarrassed. You'll be broke in 6 months, Claire went on, sipping her iced coffee. Farms fail all the time. And you? You've never even kept a houseplant alive. The words lodged in my chest like splinters. My palms were sweaty. My fingers tightened around the seed catalog until the paper wrinkled. Grandma June was gone by then, but her voice was still in my head, the last advice she'd given me when she handed me the deed. The land will never betray you, Addie. Treat it like family, and it'll take care of you for life. I felt heat rise in my cheeks. The room seemed louder, the clinking of cutlery and the hum of conversation drowning out my thoughts. But under the humiliation, something else began to burn, a stubborn, unshakable determination. I closed the catalog, slid it into my bag, and stood up. I guess we'll see, I said quietly. Nobody noticed the slight tremor in my hands as I walked out of that kitchen. But I noticed, and I knew in that moment that I wasn't coming back to this table until I had something worth putting in front of them. That night, under the soft hum of my apartment's single desk lamp, I pulled out Grandma June's old leather-bound notebook. Inside were pages of crop rotations, soil notes, and planting schedules written in her tidy script. It wasn't just a notebook. It was my roadmap, and I intended to follow it. The first morning on the farm, the air felt sharper, cleaner, like it had been bottled and saved just for me. I stood in the middle of Grandma June's old fields, dew soaking through my boots, a thermos of black coffee warming my hands. The place was quiet except for the rustle of wind through the corn stubble and the distant cry of a hawk. It didn't look like much, a small farmhouse with peeling paint, a couple of weather-beaten barns, and acres of soil that hadn't been worked in years. But it was mine, and I wasn't going to let anyone turn it into a punchline. The first few months were brutal. I rose before dawn, studied soil chemistry and irrigation manuals like they were holy texts, and spent evenings repairing broken fences until my hands ached. There were days I questioned everything, days when crops failed, machinery broke, or the bank account dipped dangerously low. Then I met Margaret Holloway, a seasoned farmer who ran one of the most successful organic co-ops in the state. She showed up one afternoon, curious about the young woman trying to bring June Carter's land back to life. Margaret didn't treat me like I was fragile or foolish. She treated me like a peer who had a lot to learn. "Farming's not about luck, kid," she told me, pressing a pair of heavy leather gloves into my hands. "It's about patience and knowing when to push, when to wait." Under her guidance, I learned to read the soil, track the weather, and negotiate with buyers who underestimated me the moment they saw my age and my lipstick. My first win came the following spring when a local farm-to-table restaurant agreed to buy my strawberries. They weren't perfect, a little small, a little uneven, but they were sweet enough to make the chef smile. That one order turned into 2, then 5. From there, I diversified. Heirloom tomatoes, sweet corn, herbs that chefs in the city fought over. By the third year, I had a small team, a refrigerated delivery truck, and contracts with multiple supermarkets. Still, I kept quiet. Social media was for sunrise photos over the fields, baskets of produce, and the occasional shot of me in muddy boots. Never the numbers. Never the contracts. My family thought I was just getting by, and I let them think it. I didn't need their applause. I wanted something bigger. The satisfaction of proving them wrong when they least expected it. One crisp autumn morning, as I loaded crates into the delivery truck bound for a national distribution center, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror, hair pulled back, cheeks flushed from the cold, Margaret's gloves still snug on my hands. I wasn't the girl they'd mocked anymore. I was the woman quietly feeding a nation. Claire arrived 20 minutes late, pulling up in a spotless, white SUV that gleamed in the sun. I watched from my office window as she stepped out, sunglasses perched on her head, clutching a designer tote like she was about to tour a boutique rather than a working farm. She scanned the grounds with mild curiosity, her gaze lingering on the wide gravel drive, the manicured hedges, the rows of sleek greenhouses stretching toward the horizon. When she walked through the front doors of the operations building, the cool air and faint scent of basil hit her. She paused, her heels clicking on the polished concrete floor as she took in the space, the soaring ceilings, glass walls, and the view of the distribution warehouse where workers moved in efficient lines, loading crates onto refrigerated trucks. "Nice setup," she said, her tone cautious, like she wasn't sure if she should be impressed or skeptical. I stood from behind my desk, an antique oak piece polished to a mirror finish, and crossed the room to greet her. "Thanks. We've worked hard to make it efficient." Her eyes darted around the office, framed National Agricultural Awards, glossy magazine covers with my photo on them, a large map of the United States dotted with red pins marking our distribution routes. Her brows furrowed. "You sell beyond the county?" I let the question hang for a beat before answering. "Beyond the state. Beyond the region." Claire's gaze dropped to a plaque on the wall. Addison Carter, founder and CEO, Green Horizon Agricultural Group. Her mouth parted, but no words came. She walked slowly to the glass wall, looking out over the fields. "This is all yours?" "All mine," I said, my voice even. "We supply produce to over 50% of the country. Every crate that leaves this property carries my company's name." I watched the realization spread across her face. The cousin she once laughed at for digging in the dirt now commanded an operation that fed millions. A delivery manager knocked lightly on the open door. "Addison, Truck 4's headed out. Boston route." "Thanks, Stan," I said, then glanced back at Claire. "You were saying?" She blinked, swallowing. "I didn't realize." "No," I replied softly, "you didn't." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The hum of the warehouse, the distant whir of conveyor belts, the muted chatter of workers filled the silence. Finally, she exhaled, her voice lower now. "I guess I owe you an apology." I tilted my head. "Guess so." I let her wander a bit longer, watching her fingers brush over the glass awards case, her eyes tracing the photos of me with governors, chefs, and international buyers. Every step she took deepened the truth she couldn't escape. The farm she mocked had become an empire. and I was the one holding the keys. Claire sat across from me at the long conference table, the morning light spilling in through the glass walls. She looked smaller now, not in size but in presence. She cleared her throat. Addison, I'm in a bit of a bind. My boutique's been struggling. Supply chain issues, costs. I thought maybe if you could. There it was. The real reason she'd come. I folded my hands on the table. You want my help? Her shoulders lifted in a faint shrug. You're clearly doing well. I thought maybe we could work something out. You know, family. I let the silence stretch. Years ago, I might have filled it with nervous chatter. Now, I knew the weight of a pause could speak louder than any word. Finally, I leaned forward. I'll help, but on my terms. She blinked. Terms?
Yes.
You work here.
Full-time.
3 months. No special treatment. You'll start in the fields at 5 a.m., you'll haul crates, you'll learn distribution and packaging. You'll see exactly what it takes to run something like this. Her eyes widened. You want me to be a farmhand? I want you to understand the value of what you once dismissed, I said, my voice calm but unyielding. And if, after 3 months, you've put in the work, I'll help you restructure your business. Claire looked like she was about to protest, but then she glanced at the workers visible through the glass wall. Men and women moving in steady, practiced rhythm, sweat on their brows, pride in their posture. Something in her face shifted. And if I say no, she asked, then you leave here exactly as you came. For a moment, her jaw worked as if weighing pride against necessity. Finally, she nodded. All right. 3 months. I offered a small smile. Good. You start tomorrow. Wear boots. Her lips twitched, not quite a smile, not quite defeat. You've changed, Addie. No, I said, standing. I've just grown into who I was meant to be. Later that day, I called my operations manager to set up her onboarding. I also reached out to my brother, who'd recently hinted about needing a little help with his mortgage. His terms would be different, volunteer work with our community garden program for 6 months before I'd even discuss financial aid. It wasn't about punishment. It was about transformation. If I was going to extend my hand now, it would be to pull them up, not to carry them. 3 months later, Claire was almost unrecognizable. The manicured nails had been replaced by calloused fingertips, her hair usually tied back under a faded baseball cap. She still had a knack for coordinating colors, even in work gloves, but now she paired them with sweat and dirt. At first, she hated it. The early mornings, the aching muscles, the way the sun beat down on her shoulders. But somewhere between planting seedlings in March chill and loading crates in summer heat, her attitude began to shift. One morning, I watched from the greenhouse doorway as she knelt beside one of our seasonal workers, carefully tying up tomato vines. She was listening more than talking, her expression soft but focused. That night, she showed up at my office with a ledger under her arm. I've been thinking, she said, about how to apply some of this to my boutique. I think I can make it work without cutting corners. I smiled. That's the point. And she wasn't the only one. My brother, after 6 months at the community garden, had started teaching free weekend classes for neighborhood kids. He told me he'd forgotten how good it felt to be part of something bigger than himself. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, I walked the fields alone. The wind carried the scent of basil and warm earth. In my office, sunlight caught the glass case holding Grandma June's old leather-bound notebook, pages still stained with soil and rain. I opened it to the first page, her handwriting looping across the top. The land will never betray you, Addie. She'd been right. The land had given me more than I could ever measure, not just food and income, but the kind of strength that grows deep roots. I closed the notebook and set it back in its place, my fingers resting on the glass for a moment longer. In the distance, I saw one of our trucks pull out onto the road, heading toward the interstate, another shipment bound for cities hundreds of miles away. I thought of that night in my aunt's kitchen, of Claire's laughter ringing in my ears. And I thought of now, the quiet power of knowing that the girl they mocked had become the woman they couldn't ignore. I smiled to myself, the words forming in my mind like they were meant for a final voiceover. The girl they laughed at now feeds the nation. And she's not done yet.